On. Why am I not seeing that? Hey guys, how you doing? I'm sorry, I'm dealing with a technical issue. Hey there, Warhamster. We're live, so if you wanna, are you showing your face today? You're on mute.
There we go. You can hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. Mr. Gibbs, how are you?
I am doing well. Just got in from my Fallbrook class in the nick of time. Everybody wanted to take me out to lunch. Far be it for me to say no to a free meal.
Well, hey guys, I hope everybody is well. I'm having some technical difficulties. I'm going to go ahead and let Doug just jump right in while I deal with my technical difficulties. And fix what I got to do, because I got to post this on the Telegram chat. So anyway, Mr. Gibbs, take it away, sir.
Yeah, very good to see everybody. Mr. Constitution, right here on Patriot Street Fighter. I was advertising this, matter of fact, in my class today, because a few people are saying, gosh, are you anywhere online? As a matter of fact, I am. Here, let me give you the way to find it. Good to see a Warhamster. Well, or to see a version of what you might be.
I'm just happy to be alive and breathing this week.
Happy to be alive and breathing.
Yeah, I feel like
I will second that for my own personal whatever. Now, for everybody who is new or you haven't been here before, this is my name is Douglas V. Gibbs, Mr. Constitution, and we are working our way through the Constitution. Old episodes can be found on this YouTube channel. There's also some that we used to do that would show up on Rumble. If you want to look hard enough at the Patriot Street Fighter website, if you want to share the link to this and you're not sure what it is or how to get it or whatever, douglasvgibbs.com. Go to classes or videos. In either case, there's a link for this page. We are in Article 1, Section 5 at this moment. We're trying to work our way through Article 1, U.S. Constitution. The first 7 articles were written during the Constitutional Convention and during the summer of 1787. And then the other parts of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, 1789, ratified in 1791, and so on and so forth. And Warhamster is here to make sure that I properly give you information without going off into weird tangents. No, that's not the reason he's here at all, but I'm sure that might be on his mind. And of course, Mr. Ron is the remnant of the Patriot Street Fighter that is a part of this program. And both of them have been in my live classes. One in Corona was Ron, and Warhamster attends one in San Diego County. Okay, that all said, now that you know who the heck I am, let's talk. So we left off on Article 1, Section 5. Article 1 is the section of the Constitution that discusses the legislative branch. So we are talking about Congress. Article 1, legislative branch. Article 2, executive branch. Article 3, judicial branch. And in Article 1, Section 2 and 3, they describe and establish and break down the House of Representatives and the Senate. In Article 1, Section 5 now, we're going to start getting into procedures. And then as we go through 6 and 7, we're going to get into how they make law. So Article 1, Section 5, each House, by the way, I love this first sentence because it ties into something very important. Each House shall be judge of the elections, returns, and qualifications of its own members. Oh, I'm sure Warhamster knows exactly where I'm getting ready to go on this. All right, so notice it said qualifications of its own members, elections, qualifications of its own members. So someone asked, well, how do we know if a person who is in the House of Representatives or the U.S. Senate, in other words, Congress, that they're eligible for that, they qualified for that job, that they're the right age or minimum or any of the other prerequisites that are required? How do we know? Who makes the call on that? The House that they are going to be in makes that call. So we've heard of Congress, seating or not seating somebody. That's where that comes from. If they're not qualified for their office, they haven't been in the United States as a resident at least 7 years or 9 years, depending on which house, or they're not a citizen, or they're not the minimum age requirement, then that house can say, we can't seat you. You're not qualified. So that's what that sentence, or that part of that sentence means. So each house shall be the judge of the elections, returns, and qualifications of its own members, and a majority of each shall constitute a quorum to do business. Quorum, Quorum. Quorum means the number necessary to do business. It doesn't necessarily mean a majority. I remember I was talking to someone who was part of this corporation, and all they needed was at least 2 members of the board to have a quorum. I think that's foolish. Makes it way too easy for a couple of guys to mess everything up, but that was their quorum. So it might be less than 50%. Another might be a simple majority. Another might be some type of super majority, like 60 out of 100 or 2/3 or 3/4 required for a quorum. Quorum is the minimum number present required in order to do business. So what it says here about Congress is that a majority of each shall constitute a quorum to do business. Each house on its own, at least a majority. So in the U.S. Senate, we have 100 members, 2 per state. So they need at least 51 people present in order to actually do business. If they have less than the quorum, they cannot do business. There's going to be no vote. I mean, they can talk about stuff, but it's not going to have any official capacity. And there's going to be no vote. You got to have a quorum in order to do business. So that's the reason why sometimes the Constitution, you'll say something of the members present. Well, because you might have a quorum, but you don't have them all. So it's a percentage of whoever's there.
Are there any examples of that ever becoming an issue?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, one of the things that we're going to get to is recess appointments. Because there's times where they want to get work done and not enough are there. Can't do anything. You got to wait till enough people get there. In the case
real quick, Warhamster, put something in the chat so I can make you moderator. That's it. Go ahead.
So he has to show up in the chat in order for you to give him that kind of power. So in other words, you have to be present in order to have any power in there. Ah, man, I'm shocked that you give a hamster that much power.
He's trustworthy.
He's trustworthy.
He's trustworthy, but he's not responding because he hasn't put anything in the chat yet.
Yes, I have.
I don't see it.
You said put something in the chat, and I typed something in the chat.
I don't see that.
Okay, while they're trying to figure that out, I will continue. All right, so each house should be the judge of the elections, returns, qualifications of zone members, and a majority of each shall constitute a quorum to do business, but a smaller number may adjourn from day to day. So it is possible to stay in session and not have a quorum. This is going to answer your question, Warhamster. We're going to get to that. And may be authorized to compel the attendance of absent members. Hey, man, we got to get stuff done. We need you to be here. The leadership can even put in place penalties if they're not there by such time or whatever. That's going to be in-house rules. In such manner and under such penalties as each house may provide. In other words, what I just said. All right, now it goes on to say each house may determine the rules of its proceedings. So let's go back now to something that we've been seeing in the news a lot lately, the filibuster. So, well, Doug, where is it in the Constitution? It's not. Filibuster is an internal rule in the Senate, is a rule that they've made. How they decide to allow that rule to exist or not to exist, put it in, take it out, that is up to the Senate. There is no constitutional provision other than to say they can make their own rules. Now, it's funny because in today's Constitution class in Fallbrook, someone said, I really think that when it comes to the, make the rule changes in the Senate or the House, that the rule changes should be like the 27th Amendment when it comes to a raise. They make their change, but it doesn't apply till the next session, till the next Congress takes, possession of their seats. And I'm thinking, that might actually it would cause some interesting situations, but no, sometimes they need to change the rules quickly for a reason, good or bad. But it is up to the House, it is up to the Senate to make their own rules. The rule book is not written by anybody else. The rule book, while it exists because they wrote it, and the Constitution really doesn't get too much into the procedural rules of the House or the Senate and how they're supposed to do things, other than a few basic things like you need a majority for a quorum. That's something they can't change. Though that rule stays in place because it's in the Constitution. But rules like a filibuster, that's up to them. That's their own rule. All right. So each house may determine the rules of its proceedings, punish its members for disorderly behavior. That's where censure comes in, not censor, censure. Censure. Some people like to say censor. No, they don't censor their members. They censure their members. Sometimes I wish some of their members were censored, but that's beside the point.
Hey, by the way, Brady, you are not showing up in the chat at all. FYI.
You mean Warhamster?
Sorry.
Yeah, I did the same thing last week. And what's wonderful about that is, now I'm not the bad guy. You are, because you did it last.
Yeah, I'm that's because I'm dealing with so many different things right now. It's like today it's definitely Murphy's Law today. Whatever could go wrong has. So anyway.
Ron, I'm seeing myself in chat and nobody else. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop out and pop back in and see if that changes it.
Okay, very well. Because I want to make you in there. I want to make you an admin.
Well, I enjoy the chat, and I don't want to miss out on it. So I'll be right back.
Okay.
Now, is this the basic chat, or is there another chat, or is this the only chat, or is it a YouTube
No, this
chat?
is the YouTube chat.
Yeah, because he was in the Zoom chat.
Oh, that's the problem.
Yeah, which I can see. I'm
Yeah,
not.
you need to in the. I need you to post in the YouTube chat, the live chat.
On my way.
Okay. Now that
he's definitely not. He's about as sharp as a marble today.
Yeah. Now that we're all combobulated again.
And hello, everybody. I'm so sorry that I I'm so sorry. Today's just been one cluster F after another. But hey, do you like my new background?
Yeah. Yeah. It looks nice.
That's actually my book collection. That's part of it. And then you
Right,
see
you
my
got your Untold History channel going. Very good.
yeah, exactly. So anyway, because I'm going to be interviewing Jim Willie tomorrow. I'm going to be with Nino on Friday. So not that this is about me. I'm just, you know,
No, it's okay. It's all about you.
starting to do some good stuff, man. So
I'm starting to do some good stuff too, but nobody's noticing yet. No, I'm kidding. My latest book is out, by the way, Creator, and I have copies of it. So when I come up on Thursday,
I ordered
get
it.
a copy to you.
Oh, you actually, I think I ordered mine on Amazon already.
Oh, okay.
But
make sure then that you do a review on Amazon.
Oh, I will.
If you purchase on Amazon, all of you, if you purchase the book on Amazon, do a review on Amazon. It actually helps me when it comes to how easily it comes up, the promoting and all that jazz. More positive the reviews, and the more I get, the better.
I'll make sure that I give you a 0 star. I'm teasing you. I'm teasing you, of course.
Yeah.
Tiffany says it's a very good book.
Thank you. You know, it's funny because people were ordering it and reading it before I even got my copies. Well, it's because you have to pay more, so they make more money off of you than I do,
right?
Than they do off of me. So they took their sweet time with me. I ordered them on like December 20th, and I got them last Friday. But
really?
Anyway. All right. Wow. And thank you, Tip. Yeah, you know what? I've had some pretty good responses so far. It's not a huge book. It's not a teeny book, 150 pages, but I put a lot of my heart and soul into it for sure. Okay. Now getting back to where we were at. So we got them punishing their members for disorderly behavior. Do you remember censure, 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 not censor, but censure? I remember when Wrangell was censured. That one cracked me up because a censure is supposed to be a punishment. What it is a public, Congress putting you in public and saying, hey, we're saying what he did was mess up. It's supposed to be like humiliating. And I can't remember what it was that Wrangell did, but the left didn't have a problem with it. It was everybody else had a problem with it. So their censure, which was done in public, and they said, oh, shame on you. And then everybody's applauding and patting them on the back. What the hell was that?
But real quick, they're asking, is there any place else to buy it other than Amazon?
I will have, I think it's available now, actually, at douglasvgibbs.com/store. And then Barnes & Noble should be carrying it as well.
Okay, I think they want to buy it now.
Of course, you can email or email me. We'll work it out. I'll give it to you. Constitutionspeaker@yahoo.com.
There you go. There you go, Darren. Constitution Speaker at Yahoo.
Yeah, I think it's. I've got one of our listeners.
I think it's the Yahoo Constitution Speaker.
Constitution Speaker at yahoo.com. Now, we have one of our ladies in Michigan who she ordered a bunch of my books, and then her dog ate the package, and then so she had to order again. But she did it through Constitution Speaker at yahoo.com. She says, I don't want to give Amazon any money. I want it to be, well, Amazon takes very little. It's my store sort of on Amazon, but they're the platform. And, you know,
so and that's exactly why, you know, I basically boycott everything except Amazon. And the only reason that I even give Amazon some credit is because the vast majority of people that I'm buying from, I'm actually even though I'm buying through Amazon, I'm actually dealing with a business on the other side.
Right.
Is if I go to Walmart,
it's a very small part because you have it on.
Right. Right. So I still feel like even though Amazon is freaking Satan incarnate, you know, yeah. You know, it's the only one that it's my only vice when I need stuff, because I still am dealing with somebody with another business on the other side. So
And they bought the publisher that I used to put my books out like 3 or 4 years ago. And so far I haven't found a better place to do it through. So, that's part of the deal too. But anyway, okay. Back to get back on our heads here. Then it says, and with the concurrence of 2/3, expel a member. I remember, I think it was you, matter of fact, Rob. Someone was asking, how do we get rid of Maxine Waters? Well, you convince the House of Representatives to expel her. They can literally kick out a member. It has to be a 2/3. So which means there's going to have people probably from both parties doing it. Typically, one party doesn't have 2/3 majority in the House. It sometimes happens. And if someone is so bad, so unruly, we can't recall them. We can't impeach them. They would be expelled by their fellow members. The other way to get rid of them is quit voting for them every 2 years. But that's the two ways to get rid of someone in the House. But in the case of the House or the Senate, they may expel their members if they're so out of whack. And that's interesting because I know it has happened. I remember reading somewhere, but I don't think it's been recent. I don't remember the last time it happened. All right. Each house shall keep a journal of its proceedings. We want everything in writing. Everything is in writing. And from time to time, publish the same. So ultimately, however often, the congressional record is supposed to be published. And we do have a congressional record. Matter of fact, if you want to look up anything, it's typically online through the Library of Congress website, loc.gov. And one of the congressional records I frequent is actually from back in 1866, 1867, 1865, that era, because the debates over the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment went on there. And I've consulted the congressional record. Everything everybody said is in there. And so people ask me, well, how do you know so much about the 14th Amendment or whatever? I read the congressional record. It's available. It is made public. It says from time to time, they tend to do it every year to 2 years, depending on the Congress. So then it says, accepting such parts as may in their judgment require secrecy. So if they're voting on something about some new laser machine that nobody's supposed to know about yet, they're not going to put it in there. And for good reason. And the yeas and nays of the members of either house on any question shall, at the desire of 1/5 of those present, be entered on the journal. So it is possible to keep their votes out of the journal, how they voted. But all it takes is 1/5, which is not a large number. It's less than 100 of them in the House, to say we want the vote in there, and it will be included.
Really?
So
that's it?
That's it. 1/5. Well, for a good reason. They want it to be easy. All right. Then it says, neither house during the session of Congress shall, without the consent of the other, adjourn for more than 3 days. So in other words, if they're going to adjourn, be out of session for more than 3 days, vacation, whatever, they need to get the permission of the other house. That's interesting. The two houses have to give each other, because what if something big's coming? They're like, well, we're all going to adjourn because we don't want to vote on it. Senate says, we're not going to let you adjourn then. Be there. Then what they do is they vanish and they don't have a quorum. And so then they are compelled to return. It gets interesting. That happened a bunch of times right before the War of 1812 and a handful of times during the war between the states and just after where members would do that. All right. And then it says, nor to any other place than that in which the two houses shall be sitting. So they can't say, you know what? We're feeling like a pub today. We're going to adjourn at the pub up the street instead of on Capitol Hill. Now, they need to get permission from each other to do something like that. you meet where you're normally going to meet. Otherwise, you got to get permission from the other house. All right. So that's Article 1, Section 5. Yeah. Any questions, Mr. Ron or Mr. Warhamsters, about anything we've talked about so far?
Tracy wants to know what happened to shall meet once a year.
Yeah, that was that's it. That's in Article 1, Section 4. And we talked about that last week. Yeah, don't you wish? I wish it was once a year or less. Like I've told you guys before, there were those actually in session that argued that was too often. Wouldn't that be great? I see a tail, a black tail with a white tip. That is one of the kitties. Can't hear you. You're muted.
Yeah. So can you guess her name?
Hitler.
Cindy.
Oh,
Cindy.
got the mustache going on.
No, she's got the little mole. Cindy
Is that
Crawford.
a mole?
Cindy
Oh,
Crawford.
it looks like a Hitler mustache to me. So you got
Well.
a fascist for a cat.
Yeah, no, she's my girl. I love her. She's awesome.
He's got a fascist for a cat.
Whatever.
All right. Article 1, Section 6. The senators and representatives shall receive compensation for their services. That's an important word, compensation. See, we have two words that are used when it comes to getting money: compensation and emolument. An emolument is a salary. It's something that's due because it's a job. A compensation, you're being compensated because you're volunteering or you're giving service. It's not supposed to be a professional position.
No.
Emolument versus compensation. And it's saying that the senators and representatives shall receive a compensation for their services. In other words, you know what? You're keeping a farm, or practice, or you're keeping a store. We understand you're taking time out of your day, so we're going to compensate you because you're losing the opportunity to serve your country, to run your store, to run your farm, to run your practice, and so you're going to be compensated. They are not supposed to be professional politicians receiving a salary that makes them rich. Not that 179,000 a year is going to make anybody rich, but that's what they receive nowadays, by the way. How is it then that someone like Pelosi or Harry Reid or Schumer, they go in as a pauper and they come out a multi-millionaire? How is it that they wind up with all these millions with 179,000 a year? Well, the problem is, number one, as professional politicians, they exempt themselves from just about everything. And also they have something that the average person doesn't have: inside knowledge about stuff and inside angles also. And so what they do is they do things to enrich themselves based on their position. Things that you and I would be arrested for. If we, oh man, I'm going to buy up the stock because I know the guy who's CEO and he told me what they're getting ready to do. I'm going to buy it ahead of time. Well, that's insider knowledge, man. You can be arrested for that.
Well, you know what happened with the post office thing, all the post office properties, right?
Right.
And
Go ahead,
Feinstein.
Bill.
Yeah, well, also the United States government sold all this prime real estate to this company that was owned by Dianne Feinstein's husband. It was all these post offices that I guess they'd probably outgrown their use and they had to build a bigger one someplace else. So the federal government was going to sell them. And they just so happened that they rewarded the contract to Feinstein's wife or Feinstein's husband's business.
They awarded the contract to Feinstein's husband. And I'm sure a lot of people then, put their investment dollars. Well,
it was only, I think it was like $180 billion or something. Not just a tiny little amount of money. Not whatever.
Well, yeah, I'll give you an example of this garbage that makes me mad and I'm going to talk about a Republican and not in a favorable manner. I've actually had Republican clubs tell me I can't speak at their club because I hammer on this guy. Ken Calvert. And he's a congressman from my district, 42nd district here in California. And he's a commercial real estate guy. And I grew up in Corona from like the age 12 on. I spent my high school, teenage years, junior high and high school in Corona. And he was just a real estate developer back then. And then he wound up, becoming an office holder. And what he does in Congress is he purchases a commercial plot of land, commercially zoned, and it's undeveloped. Then what he does is he puts an earmark on a bill somewhere asking for money for the infrastructure for that property, federal money. The federal money then goes in, it puts in an infrastructure, your sewer, your gutter, your sidewalks, whatever. And then once the infrastructure all goes in, what happens to that property is it's now more valuable because it's partially developed. It's not just undeveloped, weeds covered, land on the backside of some whatever. And then he sells it for that higher price. That's sort of like insider trading, except for in this case. I'm sorry?
You think?
But the thing is, and it's unethical as hell. But the problem is, see, if you were and I do something like that, we're in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
He's exempt. He can do that. It's totally legal.
Well,
There's nothing illegal about it.
I've got a real life story of that. I had a client about a decade ago forwarded me an email with a bunch of names. He goes, "Oh, go down." He goes, "Follow this email chain and take a look at the stocks." Well, I noticed a couple of prominent names on the email chain, including, I'll just call her former First Lady of California. And they were doing all kinds of insider trading picks. I had to call the client. I said, "Please don't ever send me anything like this again." And I ended up having to fire the client about a month later. But it's really prevalent in California, especially with venture capital.
Oh, absolutely. And so, and the reason I'm talking about this is they're not supposed to be playing games. They're serving their country. It's supposed to be something that they receive a compensation for.
That's right.
And here they are, not only professional politicians making lots of money with a paycheck, but then on top of that, they've got their hand underneath the skirt of America.
It's worse than that. I mean, I picked up that book, The Real Fauci and The Real Anthony Fauci by RFK.
I've heard about that.
Oh my God. Whatever you think,
it's worse.
Multiply that by 1,000 and you're barely scratching the surface.
Oh no. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, things have been coming out about Fauci and the things that he owns, he's got his hands on a whole bit. And they're all one big, I sent out a video, which Warhamster told me a little bit about a little bit of an adjustment to what was in it. But I mean, it basically is who owns the world? You got the same players got their hands in everything.
Mm-hmm.
Now, yeah. And see, for me, I have no problem with doing real well. I have no problem with becoming wealthy. I have no problem with running a successful business, corporation, whatever. But when that becomes something that is larger than just a business, and you begin to screw with world events and collude with other companies or collude with governmental systems or collude with other important players that adjust society in the way that they do, I've got a problem with it. There's nothing wrong with doing well, but when you do well, then you use that power for evil.
Mud says
colluding with government and colluding with each other. I've got a problem with you.
Mud says, "Ask Martha Stewart." Boy, that was an example made out of her.
Yeah.
Well, these companies they work like cartels, these corporations. And
that's correct.
And a cartel exists for two reasons. One is to maximize profit, and two is to eliminate competition.
Right.
And the best way they eliminate competition is they use the levers of government power to put up barriers to entry and other restrictions for any competition to ever enter their field.
And the founders had a word for that: mercantilism.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that's what the SEC is. The SEC is not there to protect investors. The SEC is there to protect the big guys, just like the FDA is there to protect pharmaceutical industry. It's all backwards. Whatever whatever their designated function is proclaims to be, flip it, and that's the reality. And it's like the Affordable Care, and from legislation perspective, the Affordable Care Act, the Patriot Act. I mean, those are two examples of things that are the absolute opposite of what they are portraying themselves as or sold to us as.
And then, of course, my first question after that's going to be, where in the Constitution does it authorize those agencies
It doesn't.
or departments? It doesn't.
Mm-mm.
For good reason, to prevent us from experiencing their mercantilistic behavior, for
Mhm.
example.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so senators, representatives shall receive a compensation for their services to be ascertained by law. In other words, it's a legislative process and paid out of the Treasury of the United States. They shall, in all cases except treason, felony, and breach of the peace, be privileged from arrest during their attendance at the session of their respective houses. One of the problems, and see that right there is the reason why they think they're above the law. They can't be arrested for something other than treason, felony, or breach of the peace while they're in their capacity, or they're doing their thing as a Congress critter. But the reason behind that is one of the practices in the old world, in Britain and the other countries in Europe, was that now I just lost my train of thought.
Let me ask
that
a question.
What would happen is someone would get arrested so they wouldn't vote on something because of another political figure. Stuff like that.
Let me
They
ask.
were trying to avoid that. Go ahead.
I want to ask a question here because it says arrest. Be privileged from arrest during their attendance at the session of their respective house. So
then it says after that,
no, and in going to and returning from the same. So and for any speech or debate at either house, they shall not be questioned or any question. So what I'm saying is that let's say that when they say they're coming in session, if they're in session for like 6 weeks, they are like if Congress is in session for 6 weeks, they can't be arrested at all during that 6 weeks, or
Correct.
is it when they're at their house? Like, can they be arrested
when they are in the
so when Congress itself is in session,
right?
Regardless of whether they're
It says during their attendance at the session. So at the end of the day, they're in their little house or
they can be okay.
Then that's different.
Okay, I wanted to make that clarification.
Yeah, it's while they're in attendance and going to or from that location where their attendance would be.
Okay.
But once they get to their little bungalow or they come home to their district or whatever, if the sheriff wants to pick them up or the U.S. Marshal wants to because there is a warrant, the problem is everybody thinks it's anytime. Well, they're privileged from arrest because they hold office. No, not at all.
Only when they're actually in the Congress or they're actually in the chamber or
when they're in attendance or they're going to or from that place in which they're going to be in attendance for as a Congress critter.
That's it's a very fitting critter. It's a very fitting term.
Yeah, I didn't know what to call them for the longest time. And every time I said cockroaches, especially on Patriot Soapbox, suddenly the chat room would fill up with all these dancing cockroaches. So colorful ones at that. And so it's Congress critter for me, usually. Sometimes I call them cockroaches. All right. And for any speech or the House, they should not be questioned in any other place. In other words, that speech and that debate is for that moment. It's not something that, legally, you said, and while you're in Congress, that can't use that for legal reasons. All right. No senator or representative shall, during the time in which he was elected, be appointed to any civil office under the authority of the United States, which shall have been created, or the emoluments whereof shall have been increased during such time. Now, the best way to explain to you what that is, and then bring into play another topic, is one of your favorite people in the world, Warhamster. In fact, I think this guy practically worships her. Hillary Clinton. We'll wait until he's done puking.
She's
All right.
lovely. She's lovely.
Yeah. Hillary Clinton served in the United States Senate for the state of New York. While she was in the United States Senate for the state of New York, the vote came up to increase the pay for Secretary of State. She was a part of that vote and voted to increase the pay for the Secretary of State. And then she later became Secretary of State when a new president took office, President Obama. And according to this, it says that, once again, no senator or representative shall, during the time which he is elected, be appointed to any civil office under the authority of the United States, which shall have been created, or the emoluments whereof shall have been increased during such time. She voted for the increase. She is ineligible for that office. But yet she was appointed and given that office. Now, they knew it was unconstitutional, so what they did is they used something called the Saxbe fix. Saxbe. That's Sierra Alpha X-ray Bravo Echo, Saxbe fix. Some people spell it with a Y at the end, but technically it's with an E. And it's named after a gentleman in the Nixon in the Nixon administration where the same thing had happened. And it's actually had happened before too, under Woodrow Wilson and a few other cases. And so what they do is they say, oh, you voted for a raise for Secretary of State. You can't hold the office unless we get rid of that raise. Then we'll let you hold the office. That's their thinking. So the Saxbe fix then is to roll back the salary to what it was before she voted for it. That way it's as if the vote never happened. Therefore, she didn't really vote for a raise. Therefore, she can hold the office. But that's not what the Constitution says. It says that if somebody voted for the creation or the increase of emoluments for an office, they can't hold that office. Whether or not they get changed later is not the point. Of course, this is to guard against corruption. This is to guard against, hey, I tell you what, if you vote for this, we'll let you have that or whatever. But that's exactly what happened with Mrs. Clinton. So what they do is, and I really want you to understand this. People say, well, how is it they get away with some of this stuff? Because they play games with the Constitution. And nobody is able to fight against it because we don't even realize what's going on half the time. Oh, that's unconstitutional? No problem. Saxbe fix. We'll roll back the emolument. See? Everything's good and toasty. Go ahead, Hillary, take office. How do you fight something like that? Well, if you go to the courts, they'll say, oh, well, it's a congressional thing. It's out of our jurisdiction. There's nothing we can do about it. If you go to Congress, they say, well, you don't have any standing and you're not in Congress, so you have no say. The average citizen, in other words, can't do anything about it because they have established a system in such a way that keeps us from having a voice. I'll give you an example, a little side note here. Some of you are probably wondering what's going on anyway with this. December 7th, 2020, the Constitution Association filed a lawsuit against Kamala Harris for him being ineligible for office. Both of her parents were not citizens at the time of her birth. According to Vattel's Law of Nations, 6 cases of dicta by Chief Justices of the United States and the Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1790, in order to be a natural-born citizen, both parents need to be citizens at the time of your birth of the country. In the Kamala's case, neither was. She was born in Oakland, but being born on American soil is not enough. In fact, it doesn't even matter. It really comes down to who your parents were. And so after a year of fighting and filing and dealing with the courts, Kamala Harris defaulting, she never responded to the case, and no one has responded on her behalf that can. At one point, the U.S. attorney responded, but they didn't do it on her behalf. They did on behalf of the federal government, of which we said they didn't have standing, was our response. A week before Christmas, they dismissed the case. The reason why they dismissed the case, and I'll explain what's happened since then in a minute, is they're saying that there's a jurisdiction problem, that Congress has the authority to determine the eligibility of the president or vice president. And since that is a constitutionally granted authority to the Congress, the courts cannot be involved with that issue, separation of powers. Except the Constitution does not give Congress that authority. As we read at the very beginning of our show today, Each house shall be judge of the elections, returns, and qualifications of its own members. Doesn't say anything about president or vice president. In fact, nowhere in the Constitution does it say that the Congress has the authority, or anybody has the authority, to determine the eligibility, or if a candidate is eligible for their office for president or vice president. The final sentence of the 12th Amendment says that the vice president must meet the same eligibility requirements of the president, and the eligibility requirements of the president are laid out for you in Article 2, which includes natural born citizen. So if nobody is given the authority, then that means somebody was. Because the way the Constitution is written is if it's not given to the federal government and it's not prohibited to the states, that power is reserved to the states and to the people, or to the people. 10th Amendment. So therefore, the authority to determine whether or not Kamala is eligible for her office rests on the shoulders of the state legislatures or to the people. It's a concurrent power. The people have the same power. Well, guess who I am and my fellow compadres in the Constitution Association are? The people. Therefore, we not only have standing, we have the duty to do this. And so with that argument, we have appealed the dismissal decision to the Ninth Circuit Court. Ninth Circuit has accepted our appeal. They're waiting for our full explanation, which is due by the 25th. I have a meeting tomorrow over this. We should be almost finalized by then. But here's the point of all of that. They're basically saying, hey, people, that's up to us. And you can't even use the courts. And you say, but the Constitution says, nope, that's not what we say the Constitution says. We say the Constitution says it's up to Congress. And since it's up to Congress, and the only way to Congress is through Congress, you can't use the courts. Tough, too bad, nothing you can do about it. So much for a government for the people, by the people, and of the people, right? So that's what we're dealing with here. So now we get back to what I'm talking about here. So we got the Saxby fix. And say, hey, that's garbage. You can't do that. Says who? They say. We're following the Constitution. We rolled back the emolument. Well, I want to sue about that. Well, what's your injury? You don't have an injury, so you don't have standing. Just shut up and take it. That's basically the message we get. So Hillary Clinton became Secretary of State, even though it was illegal, because they violated that clause I just told you about with what they call the Saxby fix. And it's enough to make someone like me just get all burned up. And I talk about it and I complain about it and I send letters and I make phone calls. And the response is, well, Doug, you're just one person. And besides, you got no standing. There's nothing new about it. So we have a criminal organization that some people call the federal government acting in a criminal manner. And the response is, oh, by the way, they're making their own rules. They will pick if they can do it, and they will pick if there should be a punishment. You can moan about it and groan about it, but it really doesn't matter because it comes down to whether or not they've determined whether or not it's right or wrong. I mean, you talk about giving the teenager the keys to the liquor cabinet, the Ferrari, and a credit card to use. Well, yeah, what could go wrong, right?
Conservative Cowboy wants to know if the Congress and Senate pass new law that nationalizes elections, and can states say, no, we will not comply
Yes.
with that? Yeah.
Especially when it comes to the presidential election. When it comes to the Senate and the House of Representatives election, Congress cannot make new law for new regulations. What they can do, according to the Constitution, is if they feel that, they can make regulations or alter regulations, but it's supposed to be only for making sure that the election runs properly, because the state's tyrannical. So they can make law, some law, for at the Senate and House level, but they're not supposed to federalize it. As for presidential and vice presidential election, there's no authority whatsoever for Congress to make law. There is no place, period, in the Constitution that allows Congress to make any law regarding presidential elections or vice presidential elections. It's totally up to the state legislatures because they're the ones that are supposed to be appointing the electors. None of Congress's business. And there should be, and if they do federalize the election, the presidential election, there should be lawsuits all over the place, and I will probably be behind one of them. And people say, well, Doug, do you really think you're going to win? Probably not. But you know what? It brings the attention to the other court that I really love, the court of public opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And because I'm trying to get people out there spitfire mad, and that they know what's going on. And because the wonderful thing is if enough of us get mad, it's sort of like ants. I love the nature channels, Discovery Channel, stuff like that. You ever watch those channels?
Yep.
And there's this, and ladies, I apologize. Guys probably won't have, but you ladies, just bear with me here. So you got this dead carcass in the dirt. A couple ants come by, they look at it, they leave. Nothing happens. But when the swarm of ants shows up, boy, it's mere hours and that sucker is gone. It's amazing what we can do as a group. But we got to be willing to do it as a group. We're not organized enough, not the way we should be.
Agreed.
We need to be a swarm of ants.
Well, that's sort of
Or
our
be-
that's sort of our nature. I mean, we are independent thinkers.
Yeah,
We don't follow herd
we're
mentality.
very
well.
individualistic.
We're not
Yeah.
sheep.
Yeah, very good. Well, and the problem is everybody keeps saying no. Everybody keeps saying, "Oh gosh, we need a shepherd to help us with this." No, we don't need a shepherd. We need a wolf. Not a wolf. What do you call it? The hound dog. The dog that the shepherd dog.
Sheepdog.
Sheepdog. That's what I'm looking for. Sheepdog. You need a sheepdog. Don't need a shepherd telling us what to do. We need a sheepdog that gets us all together so we can do it. It's amazing what we can do as a group. And I get it. Conservative, especially, it's in our nature to be individualistic, and we argue over some of the stupidest crap.
Well, talk is in Josie says that we need. Well, Josie says we need to actually. We need somebody to organize us, and we kind of had that with Trump.
Yeah,
in a way,
and he was outside the parties, and that's why we appreciated it too.
Right, and I think they're trying to do that now, but it's I mean they trained us as best they could in that 4 years, but whereas we're individuals like Warhamster says, we and yes,
we're fighting a group who does the hive mind really well.
And we are the leaders we're looking for, and true, but we're also the individuals that come together, and we don't. It's harder for us to come together because we don't have the herd mentality. I know for me, when I have no problem grouping up with some people, but I'm a very strong-minded individual. I don't do well with orders, which is one of the reasons why I didn't stay in the Navy.
Sometimes you don't play well with others.
Something like that.
I actually do play well with others, and I do well in those situations if it's reasonable. And so military worked fine for me. It was all reasonable to me, but the moment it becomes unreasonable, I become I become very difficult to herd as well.
Conservative Cowboy again. I've been hearing a lot about citizen grand juries. Are they legal, and do citizen grand juries really exist?
Citizen grand juries do exist. They are legal, and what it is. Matter of fact, I was talking to a woman who is a part of a movement to create a new citizen grand jury in Riverside County, and the thing is about grand juries is grand juries have the power to indict. The idea of a citizen grand jury comes from the term common law grand jury, which is something that was used in Britain and early America. And it was when the people came together in a grand jury. The problem is not whether or not it can exist and whether or not it can do what they say they can do. It's whether or not the government body then accepts the determinations of that grand jury. And that's the reason why it's so important to get Congress critters and state legislature critters and county supervisor critters that are in tune with what we are, doing and thinking and wanting, because then they can help legitimatize the common law grand jury. And then once you have that common law grand jury or citizen grand jury in place, and then you issue an indictment against someone like, oh, I don't know, Maxine Waters, and she's home in her district, and the sheriff shows up and arrests her, and she says, well, on whose authority? The authority of the citizen grand jury. Here's the indictment. And then one of the things that can be used, and unfortunately the left has picked up on this before because they've heard us talking about it, is the 14th Amendment, Section 3 says that anybody that is given aid and comfort or participated in insurrection cannot hold office. They need to be removed from office. They need to be arrested, removed from office, and not able to hold office ever again. Now, the problem is with that is, while that's a fantastic part of the Constitution, they are now wanting to use that against the January 6th supporters that are holding office.
We did some.
They are trying to use our own stuff against us. Go ahead, Warhamster.
Did some homework into the citizen grand jury last year when the election challenges were starting, and apparently there's like 6 or 7 states have citizen grand jury rules where they actually have teeth, and the rest of them is pretty much an empty shell. But I want to.
That goes back to whether or not the government apparatus is accepting the findings of those grand juries, and so those 6 states will. The rest of them basically won't. Go ahead.
Interestingly, Pennsylvania was one of the ones that does. So that was kind of one of the hopes out of Pennsylvania early on.
Pennsylvania, and I think Virginia is one of them, isn't it?
I'd have to go back and check.
Yeah. The reason why those 2 stick to my mind is I believe it's the 2 commonwealths that it works in, because they see themselves as even more independent and sovereign as the rest of the states because they're commonwealths, Pennsylvania and Virginia. But that's a side note. But so they do exist, as I've been now. I've had confirmed by one of our compadres, the Warhamster here. So now the question is, Warhamster, from your studies, if they were to have in those 6 states, if a citizen grand jury was to then put out an indictment for a person holding office, is U.S. Marshal or the sheriff, who is it that would, or did you get that far?
Again, I'd have to go back and check the notes. It's been a while.
Yeah, well, then you got homework, damn it. And we're not going to put up with any slacking from you. No, I'm kidding. But I will say this: I'm glad you did that homework, and I have read similar stuff. I know there's a few states that recognize them. Here in California, we're not a state that necessarily recognizes them yet, but some of the counties do. It's kind of a weird thing. The state won't, but some of the counties will.
The real big difference is whether they have actual subpoena power.
Right.
So, and if you have subpoena power, then it's got teeth.
Right. And you got the teeth, and then you can indict and things like that as well. All right. Very good. And that may be one of the tactics we can use. One of the strategies we can use in turning this around. Now, I'm a firm believer the best way to get the citizen grand juries is to finish the question with a conservative cowboy. The best way to get them in play is to do some other stuff first, such as get ourselves being a republic again. You get rid of the 17th Amendment, and you get rid of Reynolds v. Sims, so suddenly citizen grand jury is an easy thing to put together because now you've got allies that are in the apparatus. Okay. Any other questions, comments, or whatever?
I'm not
because we're like 1 minute before the top of the hour.
Yeah, I don't see anything going back.
All right, I'm gonna go into the first sentence of Section 7, then we're gonna leave off there.
Okay.
All bills for raising revenue shall originate in the House of Representatives, but the Senate may propose or concur with amendments as on other bills. What that is saying is this. Now, let's back up. Let's get a little context here from when they were writing this. Remember, the 2 houses of Congress at the time were to be different from each other. The House of Representatives, democratically voted in by the people, voice of the people. The U.S. Senate, appointed by the state legislatures, voice of the state legislatures. The House is given the power of all bills for raising revenue shall originate in the house. In other words, they have the power of the purse strings. If it has to do with money, it has to start in the house. What that does, that gives the people the ultimate authority, the authority over the money. Oh, we need a new budget. You want us to write a new budget bill? No problem. We're leaving that out because we don't like it. We're defunding it.
Well, wasn't that part of the problem with Obamacare? Because the ultimate version that got approved was the Senate version, and then they argued that it was a tax.
Well, they argued that it wasn't a Senate version because what they did is they took because if you look at Obamacare, it didn't have an S number, it had an HR number. What they did is they took a House of Representatives bill and they stripped all the language out of it, and then they put the Senate language into it. So even though it was a Senate bill, because of the HR number, it was technically, according to them, a House of Representatives bill. Therefore, it could be a tax. They played a game, in other words, like they usually do.
It's ridiculous.
So it was Senate language in an HR bill that was actually originally about something totally different.
Right.
Boy, these people are snakes.
Well, you know what? It's not even that, Doug. I mean, they are snakes, but the thing is that they get away with it.
Yeah.
I mean,
and like I said, they make it so that we can't do a whole lot about it.
Yeah, and
then people wonder why everybody's talking about an armed civil war.
The only remedy that we have is to take him to court, and that fails. I mean, nobody.
You take him to court with federal judges that were appointed by federal personnel that receive federal money. How do you think it's going to turn out?
Right. I get it.
We're supposed to have a media to keep him, hold him to account, and make sure the public knows.
Yeah. The watchdog media. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, they put a shock collar on that media.
Yeah, that dog don't hunt.
That dog don't hunt no mo.
Well, that dog never hunted. That dog was, I was reading.
Suddenly the mockingbird. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, there's that too, but I was reading that the real Lincoln, and he went through, and he actually sent federal troops into newspapers that were anti-Civil War. They were anti what he was doing. He closed down newspapers that were with federal troops that were reporting things that he did that were unconstitutional.
Yeah, because everybody knows it's perfectly constitutional to militarily occupy another country if states secede because they didn't like what you were doing, right?
Right. That
was rhetorical and
exactly
sarcastic, folks.
100%.
The real Lincoln by
De Lorenzo.
Yeah, thank you, De Lorenzo. I'm thinking of his name, John. Well, he's also the one who wrote. Also wrote Hamilton's Curse, which is the only book I recommend more than my own. Hamilton's Curse. But a lot of people, the problem is President Lincoln has been propped up as this hero, and for good reason, because that's what they want. It's about an agenda. When I say for good reason, I mean good reason for them, not for us. And so you've got everybody loving this guy. Well, he freed the slaves. No, he didn't. And in the beginning, he didn't have that intention anyway. What freed the slaves was the 13th Amendment. What freed the slaves were the people in the legislature who wrote that proposal up, and the states who ratified it. That's who freed the slaves. Lincoln wanted to contain slavery. And then once they were free, he wanted to send them someplace else so they could have their own colony, because he believed that they could not coexist with the white man.
Well, he didn't want them to coexist with the white man. It's just like,
he didn't think they could. Was it possible?
It's funny. You look at the North, and when I see the North, it's like people in Beverly Hills. They don't want Black people living in their neighborhood, but they're all about supporting Black people's rights.
Well, it's just like the homeless thing going on, and San Francisco's city council had voted that the sidewalk, since it was a public right-of-way, that the homeless could sleep or partake in that space anytime they wanted. So a conservative activist decided to dress up as a homeless person, get himself a tent, and pop that tent up right in front of one of those city council members' houses.
Mm.
Didn't take very long before the police was there to arrest him for sleeping on the sidewalk in front of that city council member's house. So in other words, rules for thee, not for me.
Correct.
And also the most, when it comes to racism, for example, and I was talking to my friend in Tennessee about this, because I was surprised. You go in the South, you don't see the segregation that you see here in California or in the Northeast, where, you have everybody's in their own little whatever. I mean, you go to the Cracker Barrel, man, and, it black, white, whatever, you're being served by all kinds of folks. And the reason why is, like my friend John said, John L. Hancock, the author of Liberty Inherited, is, the South has dealt with that issue. They went through the process of dealing with civil rights and all of that. They're over it. All of the racists are the ones that's calling out everybody else racist. The ones that are in the Northeast, the white liberal, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So
you're preaching to the choir, man. You're preaching to the choir.
Yeah, I've got a class in San Juan Capistrano tonight, so I got to get out the door real soon. As always, appreciate all of you. Thanks for being here. We'll be here next week. We'll continue through Article 1, Section 7. We'll break down how law is made. We'll get into the two houses, the committees, all of that jazz. And then we'll start getting into Article 1, Section 8, which is the authorities granted to the federal Congress. And you'll be surprised when I start breaking some of the stuff down, because the language is important. Okay. Any final thoughts, Ron?
Well, I just want to say that, today we actually had a pretty good class. I looked over, I was monitoring the amount of people that were in here, and we got as high as 67, which is pretty good. I mean, the big numbers the big numbers that we got, the biggest numbers were when we talked about the Second Amendment, but I was really pushing that class. But we're consistently rising, which is good. It's very good.
And here's the thing, for those of you still listening, you enjoy this, you think more people need to hear it, tell more people about it.
And I'm gonna be pushing this, you guys, and as you guys could see that my background changed today to the Untold History channel. And if you go to untoldhistory.us, it'll take you right to my Rumble channel. I'm actually going to be starting to do a lot more body of work on the more interviews and more content. So apparently some people feel that I have a voice that needs to be heard. So I'm going to make it heard.
Well, I feel like I may have been a slight influence on that.
Yeah,
so I almost feel like an uncle or a daddy or something here.
I will say that, doing the Constitution classes with you has given me the confidence to do this. I mean,
all right.
Prior to that,
I'm thrilled.
Yeah.
Well, so. You know what? Let me say this, and I'm going to make them blush because that's what I do. Ron, you really do have a very good mind. You have a good way of explaining things. You have an understanding that most people don't, and you definitely have information in your head that needs to be shared. So I'm excited that you're doing it, and I couldn't hope for a better person to do such a thing. And the fact that War Hamster is participating here and there as well. And matter of fact, I think aren't you guys doing this together, or is this mainly yours?
Yes. So we're going to be doing some collaborative work. We already do a Monday evening show, 4 p.m. Pacific.
All right.
It's a live with Dan Radio Style and Alpha Warrior, and so we do a weekly roundtable. But I'm going to start branching out and doing some stuff on my own, and War Hamster and I are going to be doing some other stuff together, because there's very few people that I've met that have the breadth of knowledge and understanding than the War Hamster. War
Hamster is one of the better researchers I know, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's a good friend of mine, good female friend of mine. Her name Maddie, and she goes by the name Moxie, and her and I are probably going to do a nightly show not nightly, but one day a week or something, just get together and talk, because she also has a very, very broad
Is that the-
information. So
Is that the Maddie? Is that the Maddie I know?
yes, it is.
Excellent. You guys will do great. She's a great, great lady.
She's got a lot of good information.
And don't
As
let
for
these guys.
Mr. Constitution, I'm signing out. I've got to get to San Juan Capistrano for a class in a little over an hour, about an hour and a half. I need to
No,
get there.
no problem. We will let you go there, Mr. Gibbs. Drive safe. And Mr. Warhamster, I will be seeing you in very, very soon. So thanks everybody for showing up today. We appreciate you, and we will see you next week.
See you next
Thanks.
week, audience.